Thomas Sharp's a bad guy.
Welcome to Gospel Tangents, the best source for Mormon history, science, and theology. I'm Rick Bennett. In our final conversation with author Brian Stutzman, we'll talk about the city of Warsaw, Illinois today. Brian thinks it should be a must-stop for church history buffs, but the city does need to spruce up itself a little bit to restore it to its historic roots. So Brian will talk about how he came to love the city and talk about some of the Mormons there today and the things that they're doing. Check out our conversation.
And so coming back to how I started, I drove into town and saw this building. It says Thomas Sharp, Warsaw Signal. Little did I know that the Lutherans helped fund that building.
Oh.
How ironic. In 1987, there was a Mormon historian from Warsaw, or from Nauvoo, named Michael Trapp, and he came down and he gathered some people together and says, you know what, you got some history here, maybe it's the dark side of Mormon history, but let's take this old grocery store. This grocery store, I think it was built in 1880, and we'll raise some money and we'll make it look like it would have in 1840, and we'll get an old press in here. And they had a little daily newspaper ran by a guy named Ken Speed, and Ken could publish in the back, and then when tourists come in, he could, print out a facsimile of the Warsaw Signal, hand it to him. He says, I've been back to Grand and Press in Palmyra, and if you go there, they'll hand stamp a sample of what the 1830 Book of Mormon looked like. So let's do it for the Warsaw Signal here. And 6 families went in. Nobody really took charge. The museum never operated, and it kind of they raised money. Like I said, the AAL, the Association for AIDS for Lutherans, donated money. Other people, the city, donated money, and it was really a cool thing. It never operated. Nobody took responsibility. Back taxes were owed. It became owed. It became abandoned. The roof eventually collapsed, and the floor collapsed. And the 1867 Babcock printer press that they had was sitting on the floor, and people would come up unknowingly, including myself, Latter-day Saints, and look sadly in there and think, well, Thomas Sharp got his due. Thomas Sharp never published there. Eventually, it was sold at tax auction, like I said, for $700. Mayor Tiffany Murphy bought it, sold it to a guy in Nauvoo. The guy in Nauvoo decided that it wasn't worth anything and gave it back eventually to the city, and it was destroyed a couple months ago. They tore down the building. Oh. And so if you go to Warsaw today, you will not see the Warsaw Signal. So I really enjoy getting to know the good people. They had me speak at their historical society, and last year when my book was in the first edition, there's a town of 1,550 people, and we had over 100 people gathered at the high school, and I gave a little presentation on the overview of my book, and this sweet old lady comes up and says, will you move here to Warsaw? Because I told them at the end of my presentation, I said, look, you need to promote your town. You've got a story to tell. There's a tragic triangle here. Thousands, millions of people know about Nauvoo. Thousands, millions of people know about Carthage. Nobody's heard of Warsaw. When people go, they're only seeing 2/3 of what they should see. You need to come down. You need to invite LDS tourists to come here. You need to have signs and say, this is where Warren was. This is where Willard Richards and Brigham Young we're going to build a Mormon community at our request, the people of Warsaw's request, even though the local histories, including 1880 Thomas Gregg, said that they almost fell into the hands of the Mormons. That's what he writes about Warren. Well, no, we were invited. And you need to put College Hill, where Mayor John C. Bennett from Nauvoo came and helped establish the college and all these things. She came up to me after my talk, and she says, will you move here to Warsaw? I said, why? I've got businesses and property and things in Idaho. She says, we want you to be our mayor. And my wife was there, and we were talking going back to the hotel, and I said, wouldn't that just be ironic? Wouldn't that get Thomas Sharp? Wouldn't that get Thomas Sharp's goat? The first mayor, Thomas Sharp, and then later on, a Mormon being mayor. I said, we got to sell everything and do that just for the irony of history. Brian Stutzman, mayor of Warsaw, Illinois. No, I don't know if I could ever get elected, but I was invited to be.
That's
Wouldn't
fine.
that be ironic?
You should at least get an honorary title.
So I love the people of Warsaw today. And do we have time for one more story?
Sure.
The path was plowed in 1980 by a medical doctor that moved to Warsaw. It's one of my favorite stories. Although the people had turned over and there was a lot of new people working in Keokuk, people from the Midwest. Tiffany Murphy, as I said, was from Denver, first female, first non-local elected to be mayor. Wonderful lady. There was still stories, rumors, animosity, anti-Mormonism in the area. And there was a doctor from Utah. He had gone to University of Utah for his undergraduate, then went to St. Louis, a medical college there. And when he graduated, he had 5 or 6 kids, and there was a program for new doctors. I believe some of their debt would be paid off if they went to certain rural clinics. Well, Warsaw needed a family doctor, and this guy was LDS. And so he packs up his family, 7 kids or 5 kids or whatever it is at the time, and they move to Warsaw. And he's the town doctor, the only one. He's running the Warsaw Medical Clinic, and people are skeptical. Here's a Mormon from Utah, and he's the only doctor in town. And his name was Lowell Barrows. And Lowell Barrows is a phenomenal country-type doctor. And he soon won over the hearts of many of the people of Warsaw. And when I started writing my book and started talking to people, they said, "Oh, you must know the Barrows." And I said, "The Barrows? Who's that?" "Oh, he was our doctor, and he had a bunch of kids." I said, "Well, tell me about him." I did some research. The kids were valedictorians. They were smart. Meldon was the oldest, and he was the quarterback on the football team, and he was a valedictorian, and he was homecoming king. And then a few years later, his sister Linnell, I think it was the homecoming queen. And they were very popular, very well loved, and very well liked in Warsaw.
What would Thomas Sharp say?
Well, Meldon leaves on a mission. Probably the first Mormon missionary from Warsaw. He goes to, I think it's Sweden or Finland. And the bank president, Hill Dodge Bank, writes him a nice congratulatory letter for being a church missionary from Warsaw. Lowell Barrows gets the Booster of the Year award from Warsaw High School because he gives all the athletes free physicals at his clinic. Okay. By the way, the kids in Nauvoo get bused, the high school kids, and they go to school in Warsaw. The junior high kids in Warsaw get bused and they go to school in Nauvoo.
Oh, really?
Think about the irony there. Wow. So, Barrows, 11 years in Warsaw. His wife is involved with the school plays. People love him. Most people were writing me stories about how they've named their grandchildren first name after the grandfather and middle name after Dr. Barrows. Okay? They loved him. They told stories about him. He's an unassuming country-type doctor. He's there 11 years. And then the clinic, he has economic opportunity. He's got 7 kids by now, big LDS family. He moves, sells that clinic and moves to Sparta, Illinois, because it's a little bit bigger market. When he leaves, the Warsaw newspaper does a color front page article. I have a photocopy of it, and it talks about this Mormon family having such a huge positive influence on the town of Warsaw, Illinois. How cool is that?
Yeah.
He lives in Utah now, and I've been to his house. His brother-in-law lives a couple miles from me. I had no idea, and I've been able to communicate with him. He's retired, and he's older now, and the kids are all scattered and living all over, and they're very successful. But he wasn't quite aware when he took the job at Warsaw the complete history.
Oh, really?
But he left a mark. And you could go, it's the darkest part of our history, and this Mormon family comes and gets a award in front page of the paper. What an inspiration. It was an inspiration to me.
That's cool. So it's no longer an anti-Mormon hotbed.
They're still a little bit, but no, they're great people. I love the people of Warsaw. And you know, it's like if you went to southern Utah, would you judge those people on the Mountain Meadow Massacre? Like, most of them don't even know about it.
Yeah.
You know, they're just good people today.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, great. Do you have any last words for us?
No. If people go to Nauvoo or Carthage, they really need to drive the 18 miles to Warsaw.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, go to the Fort Edward site. It's about 5 blocks north of Maine. It's a beautiful bluff, and it overlooks, they talk about Nauvoo being Nauvoo the beautiful in Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
Warsaw the beautiful. You go to the point where the Fort Edwards is, you can see into 3 different states. The fort's no longer there. There's a monument that was put
And the
up.
rapids are no longer there.
The rapids are hidden by the dam, the Keokuk Dam. It's a beautiful spot. The sunsets are beautiful there. There was an ice age years ago, thousands of years ago, that created geodes, and there's geodes all over the place. And the nickname for Warsaw, where this monument where Fort Edwards is, that's called the Point, and the motto for Warsaw today is called the Crystal City on the Point. The crystal after the geodes, and there's Geode Park, and there's a couple parks, and people have given me geodes from Warsaw. I have them at home. They're these rocks that are crystallized. But it's, you take out those 6 years of Mormon trouble period, 7 years of Mormon trouble period, and it's a fascinating little town that's all positive. You throw that in, and I tried to tell them, I said, you know, in my speeches to the Historical Society and to the community, I said, you know, this is nothing to be ashamed of. You had nothing to do with it. But it's the reason that Warsaw is important and have interest to the outside world is because of the time that the persecution of Mormons. It wasn't pleasant. It's not nice. You've got murders that lived here. That doesn't every town. We've got outside interest in what happened because of those 6 years. Now, we didn't really talk about the brewery, but if you get there, Warsaw was known for a time for its alcohol. Okay. In 1860s,
Word of wisdom must have been a big problem too then, right?
They built this brewery, and the big building was built in 1906, and it's still there today, and it's hard to miss, and it's an icon of the city. Warsaw was known as a town of 7 bars and 7 churches. Okay, and we could probably edit that out because that's after. So, well, anything you want to talk about?
No, I think that's great. So thank you so much for spending so much time and teaching us more about Thomas Sharp and Warsaw.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Brian Stutzman. Brian, thanks for driving all the way down to Salt Lake City, and I hope you had a safe drive back to Idaho. It was a fun conversation. I learned a lot, and I hope a lot of people did as well. I'd also encourage you to go out and buy his book, The History of Warsaw, Illinois, if you want to learn more about these details. So it's a fantastic book. Check it out. In our next conversation, I'd like to introduce Dr. Quincy Newell. She has a book of her own about early Black Mormon pioneer Jane Manning James. We'll get more acquainted with Quincy. She actually has a different background than all of my other guests up to this point.
Yeah, about 2 hours from Rochester.
Okay.
So I actually take students on a field trip to all the LDS historic sites in the Palmyra
nice.
area. Usually every fall, if I can manage it. So, yeah.
So I think one of the things that's most perplexing to me, and I think my listeners as well, you're not Mormon.
No, I'm not.
Why in the world are you studying Mormonism? If you'd like to hear the entire interview uncut, please support Gospel Tangents and become a subscriber. For just $5 a month, go to patreon.com/gospeltangents and you can hear the entire interview. And you can also get transcripts available at either our Amazon website, or if you want to give the money to me and not Amazon, please subscribe on my website at gospeltangents.com and you can click the yellow subscribe button. Of course, we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and all the other places. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes at tinyurl.com/gospeltangents. And don't forget to click here to subscribe on YouTube, here for a transcript, and over here we've got some more of our great videos. Thanks again for listening.